And then I downloaded your book, and I remember I downloaded it at like 9:30 at night, and I read the whole thing that night. Every time I was reading, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this more. I love this more.
Things were starting to talk to us, and signs starting to show up. And then that is how we end up with SquareCow. So I'd say for everybody that's listening to us, trust your gut, watch for signs. They're all there. And once you see them, you can't unsee them anymore.
And now we're actually in the last stage, which is called closing. And this one, it's a behemoth. It's a lot.
Welcome to the Franchise Champion Show. I'm Alan Regala, former D1 athlete, Stanford engineer, and 14-year franchise owner who built and sold a multi-million-dollar business. I created this show to help driven individuals like you find the right franchise and learn how to build wealth and reclaim your time. My guests today are a couple who just signed a franchise agreement together with SquareCow Movers. One of them spent 14 years coaching Division III college tennis and has been exploring this for months. The other joined the process partway through, and from what I saw, became a pretty decisive voice in the final call. They just signed, and the first couple of weeks have already thrown them a curveball. This is episode 1 of what I hope is a long series. Steve and Iara Anschutz, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
I am so glad to have you guys on board. We have been working together for months, and you guys just recently signed, and I'm so excited to tell your story. And, as I mentioned, I hope to have this the first of like a little mini series where we get to check in with you guys and kind of see what progress you've made and how things are going, throughout the course of your building your business. But to start, Steve, take me back to before any of this started. What did life look like before we met? And what was making you restless?
Yeah. Like you said, I was, right? Kind of in between right now. I was a Division III tennis coach. Was doing that for a long time. I'm into my 14th year. And really it got to a point where I work a ton, right? I'm recruiting all the time. I'm working with players at practices. On weekends, we have matches. Roughly, it worked out to every year being about 30 to 35 weekends away from my family. And we have 2 little kids at home, and it just became a little too difficult, right, to manage it all. And being a family man, I wanted to be around them more. And so my wife and I kind of sat down, actually maybe a little over a year ago, and kind of said, hey, it's probably time to start looking into a different career path. So I tried that first, right? I was applying for jobs. But my job was still good enough that I didn't want to just take any job. So nothing really came up in that search in over a year that really hit the mark. And I was sitting on my computer. It was January, and I got an email from the ITA about franchising. And it was you, Alan, and I was watching this, and it just spoke to me. Everything it said just made sense, and I was like, this is my path. This is where I'm supposed to go. And so I reached out to you, and that led us down this process that we're going to talk about today.
Wow, that's really cool. That's really cool, and it's good to know. Some of the marketing I'm doing works. That's really cool. So, I would love to hear what that process was like for you. From your perspective. We haven't really talked about this before, but from that kind of beginning stage, I think you did maybe download my book, and I remember you telling me about that. So tell us a little bit about that, and then just what the process was like over the next couple months.
Yeah. I don't really go into anything without doing a lot of research. And so when I saw your email, I was initially really intrigued. And luckily, today's world, we have AI. And so I did a ton of research with AI on franchising. What does that mean? What does it look like? What does a franchise coach do? And then I downloaded your book. And I remember I downloaded it at like 9:30 at night because we have 2 little kids. I go to bed pretty early. So I was like, I'll just read like a page or 2. And I believe it's like 50-some pages or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong. And I read the whole thing that night. Every time I was reading, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this more. Because I started really thinking about the process and what it meant for me and the future that it could hold for our family. And so I couldn't put it down. And I went to bed that night thinking, this is where I'm headed. This is where I'm going. And I literally emailed you that following morning telling you I read the whole thing and I want to start working with you and I want to know what the process is, so on and so forth.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah, I remember that. I remember reading that and being like, wow, I love it when stuff works. And I love, it's nice to get some feedback. And yeah, I'm so glad that you reached out. So what is that process for those of people who, let's say, have never, looked into franchising at all, and probably very similar to you, want to get all the information first and, want to do some research, what does that process look like? I guess if you were to just kind of explain it from, 30,000 foot view, obviously you connected with me, but what do the rest of those steps look like in getting to where you're at now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that I really realized is I'm a coach already, and I see the value in coaching, and I saw value in a franchise coach. Obviously, any individual could reach out to any franchise and start going down that process. But that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me because I was new to franchising. I don't know a ton about it. Where you had 14 years of experience, you'd been through it all. And the other way I looked at it was just listening to you talk and everything. It made sense that you would get to know me and kind of who I am and my needs or wants too, and lead us in the right path. And that made a lot of sense to me. So when we had our initial call, you kind of affirmed all those things that I was kind of thinking already. And then I think by our second call, we had like a really in-depth, if you want to say like interview, to talk about the needs and the wants, our cash value, how much we'd like to spend, what are we looking to make out of here, what kind of business, right? Do you want something that's in the home services? Do you want something with pets? Do you and all the different industries? So we had a really in-depth interview with that. And then once that was complete, you took, I think, less than even a week. I don't want to hold you to that standard, but it was really fast where you're like, I'll get back to you with several different businesses for you to look at. And it was like either our third or fourth time meeting, and you presented 6 businesses to me. All 6 I thought were really amazing. They all kind of met what we were looking for, which was, again, why we wanted to work with a franchise coach. But you gave us the tough process of narrowing that list down. Because when you listen to them all, they all sound so good, right? They all have great marketing. They all have a great why and a mission and values. But you have to narrow it down. So I remember you told me I had to get down to 2 or 3. And I came back and said, how about 4? Back and forth in a very peaceful, good way. And I listened to you, and I came down to 3. And then from that process, once I had 3, then it was really me taking the bulls by the horn and leading the conversation with each franchise. So I reached out to all the franchises. I think you connected me with them, but then I reached out to them. I connected with them via video, started the process, started talking to all of them. And it was very interesting. All 3 worked in very different ways. I know one started with a video call, the other started with just a regular call. One sent me like a survey to start with. So they all kind of started in their own ways. And then throughout that process, you do validation calls with owners, and you talk to maybe what I would call the franchise representative a few times just to keep going through the process, keep leading you through it. And through that whole process, you're just narrowing that list down. And so it was really funny. My number 1 pick that I had with you got eliminated like within a week because they came back and said, oh, actually, we can't service your area because someone just bought it. So that one got eliminated. So then I came back to you and said, can I add one? And the one I added in that I initially took out is the one I actually ended up being with. So it was great for me that I was able to add them back in. And so, yeah, essentially, I started with 3, right? Originally 6, got down to 3 real quick. Went through the whole process of talking to all of them. And then one got eliminated, a third one came back in. And then it came down through that whole process of all the validation calls and everything, where eventually got to 1 and we signed with SquareCow Movers.
That's awesome. That's great. Thank you for the recap. I think that it's going to be really helpful for people that have like no idea what this process looks like to hear from you.
I think the process made sense, Alan. Like the whole process was very smooth. At the same time, I would say that I stuck with it though. Like every week I got things done,
Yeah.
So basically I had a call with each franchise every single week. Right. So it's not like week 1, I only talked to one franchise. Week 2, I talked to the other. Every week I talked to every franchise. And I think that helped me get through the process in a very efficient manner. But by no means was it overwhelming. Very smooth.
Good. Well, that's a great insight, and you did an amazing job with that. I will say, obviously, people are in different stages of life and have, I guess, different amounts of time to be able to commit to this process. But you did a fantastic job of doing the homework. You scheduled the calls. You got on the calls when you were supposed to be on the calls, and if you were supposed to watch videos or do other things, in the meantime, in between calls, you would do those. And I think that's a really important thing for people, listening to this that are interested in going through the process is to follow through. And I think it says a lot to me. It says a lot about my client and, how well they will potentially do in franchising, because franchising is you have systems and processes and there's things you need to do, and will you do them or will you put them off and things just don't get done. And so I think that shows to the franchisors as well, because they are interviewing you as much as you are interviewing them. And so they see this and they see the work, the progress you're making, and they're like, yeah, we want people that are going to be successful, in this business, and someone who has the ability to follow through on those things and be organized and get the things done that need to get done are likely to be more successful. So that's great. That's awesome. I'm going to jump over to your better half. And I actually, it was funny. I never met Iara until I visited Wisconsin for the signing day, which it was so much fun. Great to meet you. And I don't even think we'd even spoken on the phone before then. And I remember early on in the process, I was like, hey, Steve, your spouse, it's a good idea to get them involved, early in the process. And she's welcome to join the calls. I encourage that, or, at least have the conversations, with her, even if she can't make the calls. And you definitely did that. You guys talked a lot. You involved her in the process a lot, even though, I wasn't in those conversations. So I want to hear about it from your perspective, since you have, a full-time job and you're a mom and you've been super busy, but very supportive of Steve throughout this entire process. So I'd like to hear, from you before he got into all this, kind of your perspective of things, of him starting to look into this, or even before then, when he was just anxious about doing something different. What was that like?
So it has been challenging to see Steve go through his career and wanting to spend more time with the kids and have more weekends with us. So I was always encouraging him to, look for a different opportunity. But I always told him, if you don't make a move, something is going to make you make the move. Right? So situations started to arise that I was like, there it is, right? So flags starting to show. And then he started getting more and more interested in this, in a franchise. And so I did not get into this process. He was talking to me about it and I was on the same page with him, but I didn't get involved until one day he's like, hey, I need to be at 2 validation calls at the same time. Can you sub me in one of them? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. What do you want me to ask? So I got in, and I'm pretty sure the call that I was in, my first call was with SquareCow, and it was the 2 owners on there. And I'm like, I'm here to sub for my husband. I have a few questions. So I asked a few questions, and it was so funny because that's basically the first one that I got involved in. And then I was like, wow, this is actually really super exciting. And then I got to go to the other room, right? And the other one I thought was like, oh boy, this is a really good one too. So both of us were very confused on, okay, now we're in between 2, what do we do? But I told Steve this before. He has seen me as I moved jobs a year and a half ago, and I don't know how religious people are, but things start to show to us, right? It's either in situations or through a song or things where it's starting to talk to us and signs are starting to show up. And then that is how we end up with SquareCow too, besides everything that we liked about them, and we liked the other company as well. But certain things start to happen and we're like, all right, I think we're narrowing down more and more. So I'd say for everybody that's listening to us, trust your gut, watch for signs. They are all there. And once you see them, you can't unsee them anymore. Then just start showing more and more and more. So please make sure that you're paying attention to the signs, because they do exist. In this case, we actually were almost thinking about going like with 2 at the same time. We're like, well, we can't handle 2 at the same time. We first have to start 1, right? Like, let's grow this one and then we can get into something else. But
I was definitely talking you out of that.
right? Like, you're like, I don't think you can do that. Okay. So yeah, so we're like excited about this opportunity. I'm seeing now like things are starting to get more realistic and difficult, right? Because the beginning is very difficult, and I'm sure you're going to talk more about it. But it's still very exciting for our family, because although it's not that the weekends are going away, right? Like, we're still like working possibly during the weekends in the beginning. We're still very excited to leave a business for our kids, right? Like, and build a great future.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I mean, that's really the whole goal, the whole dream is, creating an asset, something that you will have for your family, for yourselves, that you can either pass on or sell, which you just can't do, with a job. And I love how you bring up the fact that this is going to be hard work, at the beginning. And yeah, it's a sacrifice that you have to make short term for those long-term goals.
But while work is not hard, right? Like, I go back into, listen, I'm doing all this work that is so hard for my company, or Steve was doing still does such hard work for his company, but is he getting like rewarded for all the work and the time that he's putting into this, right? Like, that's going to be different. Now you have your own asset and you are being rewarded for all the work that you're doing. You have the discipline, you have the desire. So it just makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And all that hard work that you do put into your own business, it's hard work, but it doesn't, at the same time, it doesn't feel as like demotivating, as if you were doing it for someone else. When you're doing it for yourself, yeah, it's hard work, but at the same time, you know it needs to get done, and it's not a drag on you mentally like it would be for someone else. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's see, Steve. Let's talk about SquareCow Movers. For anyone who's never heard about them, tell me what this business actually does, and what makes it different from any other moving company.
Yeah, I think the thing that initially made us interested in SquareCow Movers was really the mission and value, right? They're about high-level service in an industry that might be not as well known for high-level service. They really care about the people that work for them, the franchisees, and just making great leaders. And all of that just spoke to us as people, right? The high values, taking care of others, serving others, making leaders out of your employees and yourselves, serving your local community. Everything they said just spoke to our values. So there was just a really high connection in terms of the values. And then the real service that they do is they're a moving company, right? So they do commercial, residential. Most of the business obviously is residential, and you can do packaging, the moving of the materials, and so there's a whole gamut around that. You can get into storing stuff if you get really good at it and things like that. But yeah, the thing that really attracted us to SquareCow Movers were the values of the owners, the values of the company. And even when I was going through it, every time, because a lot of companies will say they have values, but they bring it up once and you never hear it again. And so that kind of shows you that, yeah, they have to bring it up, but how strong are those values? And with SquareCow Movers, it was brought up every single call. We talked about values. And so to me, again, that spoke to me because I know how important culture is. I know how important it is to hold yourself to a standard. And I felt like they were doing that. They had those values, but they didn't just talk about it only from a marketing perspective. It was truly who they were. And they want to see that from all their franchisees. And so that really spoke to me.
Can I add something too, Alan?
Please do.
I feel like they're not trying to sell themselves. They were never trying to sell themselves to us. They were interested in us first. They wanted to know who we were and if we were a fit to their culture. And I think that's important because in the end, like, we would be part of their family, right? We're going to be sitting at a table with them, and does what we do or how we talk or how we live, does that work with the values that they have? So they, for a while, were interviewing us a lot, and not like interviewing like in a super formal way, but like they want to talk, they want to hear about you. They don't want to hear about the business. I'm not talking about the business today. Let's talk about ourselves, right? So it was that was very interesting to me. And even when we were there to do a validation in person and understand more of the business, they were not trying to sell themselves. In fact, they were doing the other way around. They were trying to talk you out to see if you were resilient, because they say this is really a tough business. And this is how we work, right? They just want to find out, like, is this the right thing for you? Because if you left that place knowing that after all the problems that they show you all the problems that they went through, so that you don't get to those problems, right? Because they already know it perfected. I'd say not perfected because there's always other situations. If you're left that place knowing that that's what you wanted to do, they knew you're ready. But they also could fire you right there and say, like, actually, if you're in doubt here, I'm not sure if you're the right candidate for it, right? So this is what I value a lot on them. They're just great people and very upfront, and you didn't feel like they were hiding anything or trying to sell themselves. That was, I think, what stuck out to me.
I love it. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Maybe we'll start with you, Steve, just on, when you had narrowed it down, you were looking at 3 businesses. And I think the thing that's always fun for me is at the very, very beginning, I tell people that you're going to have some preconceived notions about what these businesses are. And you'll have maybe a favorite right up front just because maybe you know more about it or whatever. But over time, preferences change once you learn more about a business. So I'm curious to know from you, there was one business I know that the very top business that you liked ended up getting sold to someone else. So that one came off the table. But there was another business that was a pressure washing business that you liked, I think, first, and then things just moved around. I'm curious to know from you how that, why those changed over time. What is it that you learned that you felt, made those move around as far as, which ones where your preferences lied?
Sure. Maybe this is the wrong answer, but it's the right answer for me. I am truly a person that likes to try and listen to, like, my heart or like that gut feeling. And so that's why I kind of appreciated the process that we went through with all the validation calls and all the franchise calls, because I felt like as I got to know the franchises more and more, those gut feelings or that heart was speaking more. So it's not like I looked at like the finance books and like eliminated someone scientifically. For me, it was more spiritually, emotionally, whatever you want to kind of say, a gut feeling. As I was going through it, the first one that stood out to me was pressure washing, because what I really liked about the pressure washing is that there's no one really professional doing it. There's just a bunch of DIYers doing it around the country, where this was like a professional organization that's trying to make it into something real. And so that made a lot of sense to me, and I could see value in it. But throughout the process, my gut feeling was that that was just not going to be a right fit for me. It'd probably be a great fit for somebody else, but just not for me. So again, it wasn't anything in particular. It was just kind of that gut feeling. So they kind of got eliminated. And then we came down to our final 2, which was SquareCow Movers and another one that we absolutely loved. And we did. We loved both of them. And I felt like that was a great situation to be in, because kind of like Yada said, SquareCow Movers wasn't really selling themselves on us, which we liked. They were just more about, hey, come learn who we are, and we want to learn who we are, and we'll see if it's a right fit. And what we said was, well, if they feel like we're not the right fit, we feel like we're in an awesome place because we have this other one we still love. So it's a great and a tough situation to be in. It's kind of like being a tennis coach when you see 2 people play amazing tennis and you're like, oh my gosh, somebody's got to lose. And that's terrible because they're both playing so good. And so that was kind of the situation. We had 2 amazing businesses. We loved them both, but financially we had to make a choice on one, which also probably makes sense for our future. And so going through that process was much harder, because my heart and my guts were both saying, man, I could see us doing both. We could see us being super successful in both, but we had to make a choice. And really, Yana and I sat down, we listened to our gut, listened to our heart, and SquareCow Movers just kind of stood out to us a little bit more. Behind the scenes, there was a little bit more science once we got down to two. Once we got down to two, we did look at the financial numbers, we did look at territories, and one thing that kind of spoke to us is we want to crush this, and we want to grow, we want to do an amazing job. And the other business we were looking at is they already have a pretty good presence in Wisconsin. So the ability to grow just wasn't quite there. And we want, like I said, we want to crush it. We want to have a great impact in our communities and everything. Where this SquareCow Movers, there was way more impact that we could have in Wisconsin. And that really intrigued us, even beyond the emotional feelings we had.
That makes a lot of sense. That's great. Quick pause. If you're someone who knows how to get things done, like Steve, and you're interested in putting your hard work into something you actually own, franchising is something I'd encourage you to explore. The book of mine Steve mentioned is called The Franchise Fit Playbook, a champion's guide to choosing the right business. It's only 50 pages or so, but it's packed with great info. Download it now for free at athletetoowner.com/playbook, or use the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to Steve and Iara. Okay, well, Iara, I'm going to ask you this question first, and then Steve, get your thoughts. You know, there's a moment in almost, in every process, especially this franchise matching process, going through, well, I guess it's more about going through the due diligence process and deciding if there's a brand that's a fit for you and then actually moving forward with it, right? And this is where, at some point, the numbers get real, right? Like the the finances, when you're starting to look at the loan and do all that stuff. And then, anxiety can come into play and fear can come into play. What was that like for you? How did you get through it?
Right. Like I'm going through it right now, right? Like it's getting more real every day, I think. But I never feared, to be honest with you, because like I said, I think when we're sure of our decision, we're like, okay, this can happen, right? Like this, we can crush this business. I'm more looking at Steven to crush the business as I'm like supporting the business. But anyways, I think there is some hesitation, but I feel like Steve is super disciplined, and I know he has on him to he's eager to start this and get this going, and I know he's going to be very successful. So I don't have a fear on that part. I think there is some parts that we're going through right now, other than, let me just tell you, once you see the money go away from your account, right? Because you have to start paying for it. So if you're like, oh, not going to travel, are the things there? We should be rethinking how we use our money for a little bit, right? Like that's a little bit of a fear because we were very conservative in our finances, to be honest. So then this was a big move for us, right? It's not something that we're not really big risk takers. This was I think probably the biggest risk we've ever taken, but we feel good about it. Because we know that the discipline there and that the eagerness is in there. We want to work it and make it happen. Now going through the process right now of getting your loan actually approved and all the million documents that they ask you. And then that if you don't have the truck, but if you don't have the place to park it and everything is going together and we're like, okay, someone's got to give here, right? So I think this process now is a little bit more tiring, but any point here, SquareCow Movers always coached us from the beginning of what was going to come. And they're like, although you think that you're ready to go, just wait, because now it's going to come a rain of documentation that they're going to ask you that you're not expecting. I think they're calling this rocks or something like that we have to overcome. So other than that, it's just for me, it's just having patience. And then having in the back of your mind that this is a whole process that we have to go through. But once we're through with that and we have our truck and we have everything ready to go, just have the good mentality of we're going to crush this. Keep it in the positive. I'm trying to not let any of these noises or even thought about what if. I don't want the what ifs. I want to just make sure that we stay positive. This is what we need to overcome to get there where we need to be at to make the job successful. Or the business, I should say.
Love it. I love it. And I will say just that's a really key mentality that both you and Steve have, which is you're not focused on the problems or the what if or can I. You're asking the question is how can I? And it's like, how can I crush it? It's going and knowing that it's possible to do and focusing on the things that you can do that will make it successful instead of thinking of the things that could be in your way and the things that are going to be obstacles. And that's where I think a lot of people get screwed up in business ownership and even in this process, is they're focusing too much on the things of where things can go wrong. Obviously, you need to plan for the worst, hope for the best, but go in with that right mindset is so important. And I love that you expressed that so well. Steve, how about for you? Let's hear about, the kind of the numbers becoming real and the anxiety and such. How has that played into this process for you?
Yeah. I mean, again, kind of like Yada said, it never felt like much of a risk to me. Again, everything I go into, I do it with a lot of research. And if I'm going to go in, it's because I believe in it. And so right now I feel really good. I never really, I even thought when we had to pay the initial fee, I'm like, oh boy, I'm around that time, I'm going to get super nervous. And it never hit me. I just keep feeling good. I don't know. I think right now I'm just so determined. I'm so determined to get after it, so determined to prove myself, so determined to do well for my family that nothing is really dragging me down yet. I'm sure at some point I'm going to come back down to reality and feel it. But right now, and I'm not even going to call it a high, but it's just like this level of determination that I got to get this done. I got to get this done. I'm going to do this. And so I'm really not seeing anything as roadblocks. It's just like what next is on the list so I can kill it. What's next on the list so I can crush it. What's next on the list so I can get after it. It's just give me the list and I'm going to get after it, And so we actually even had a call last week with SquareCow Movers, and she's like, hey, here's your list. How do you feel? I'm like, great. I feel awesome. Give it to me. Let's go. So really, I've been feeling so good.
That's awesome. That is so good. It's so good. I hope people out there taking notes. If this is like you, I mean, essentially, what you're doing is, you're betting on yourself, and you are just so confident in yourself and your ability to get things done. And that combined with you're asking good questions, through the process. I mean, the reason I'm going to just jump in and say the reason you probably didn't have as much nerves and anxiety and all those things, because you went through the process of learning, and fear gets combated with knowledge, right? So once you understand more about the brand and you have questions and you can ask about that and the financing and all those sorts of things, you've just squashed all of those fears because you now have more information in your head, and then you can move forward, making an informed decision. And knowing that, yeah, of course, there's going to be risk in everything, but you're at the end of the day, you're betting on yourself or yourselves, and that you can get things done. So I love that. Love that. That's so good. Okay, so it was super cool. You guys signed, last month. It was super exciting. It just happened to be that I was going to Wisconsin to pick up my daughter from her freshman year of school in Eau Claire. And I was like, what if I come a day early and I'll swing by Milwaukee and then come and visit with you guys. And it was super cool experience. I'm going to share some pictures that we had. We got to play padel together, and we had dinner and go through the signing and all of that. It was so much fun and great to meet both of you in person for the first time. Tell me what it was like actually going through signing day. Were there any nerves there or anything going on that specific day?
Yeah, I mean, in all reality, no. I mean, just so excited. For me, it was like July 4th. Like, let's celebrate, let's have fireworks, let's go out to eat. And I think for us too, or for me especially, like it was almost like kind of magical that it all worked out that you could join us. I mean, that was just so cool because you were through the process with me the whole time and helped leading me through it. And then, like you said, that the fact that it was able to work out was just so cool that you could be there with us and go through that celebration of signing with us. I mean, the day before was maybe the most stress we had, which was still very little, just because we were looking at our accounts and putting all the money together to actually pay the fee, right? So like, it's like, okay, how much should we take out of this account to put in this account? And like, so it was just doing the math. That was maybe the most stressful part, but that again was maybe took us 20 minutes. It wasn't that hard. It was pretty easy. And then we get to signing day, and they're like again, I think a lot of people might get nervous about that process, but we're so prepared for it, and we're just so excited to step forward and go on to the next step and get this started that it really didn't faze me at all.
Nice. Iara, anything to add to that, or any countering point of view?
I just loved how as they were signing, like they're hitting the cowbell, right? Like they're playing the cowbell, and we're like, woo,
Yeah.
very excited. I'm excited to be part of like at the SquareCow. They have a conference room and an office that has like this big map, and then we became a pin in Wisconsin. I'm just excited to be many more pins in Wisconsin. It was just very happy moment for us. Very happy.
That's awesome. One thing, actually, it was really unique. I've never been to a signing for someone else. I had it for my own business, many years ago. But for someone else, it was really cool to be a part of that and to just sit next to you guys while, you were online doing a Zoom call. I think one thing that was really cool that I had never heard about before was they added like an additional document, which was... What was it? It was like the code of ethics, or what do you remember what that was, Steve?
They called it their leadership moment.
Leadership moment. Yeah. Tell us about that. What was that?
Yeah. So again, what we love about SquareCow Movers is just the high values that they have and them living that every day. And so you're signing this franchise agreement, but that second document is the leadership moment, in which they go through it piece by piece. Basically, you are agreeing with each line how you're going to act as a person, how you're going to act as a leader, how you're going to act as a part of the franchise, so on and so forth. They call it the leadership moment, so you really understand the leadership that you're taking on. And again, that we love that. Like that's why we chose them. That's part of what we love about them, and it makes you better as a person, which we love.
Love it. Yeah, Yara, I think you may have just pulled it up.
I have it. Yeah.
Can you pick one of those that is your favorite and maybe read it to us?
I like lots of them, but one of them says, the first one that's very important, it says, this is not passive income. I acknowledge this business requires my full engagement. I commit to active, accountable leadership, right? So, for example, one more that is really good. Obsessive execution wins. I acknowledge that success comes from disciplined execution. I commit to being obsessive about operations and sweating the small stuff because exceptional service is built on small details, right? So they have a whole 10 topics of these things, and they actually read that with us when we were in a visit day there at their facility, and they said, they walked through, and then they said, wait, the day of your signing, you are going to listen to all of these again, and I want you to say yes to, as you're reading, say yes to each of them, right? So it was just so cool. Even when we were there too, I was ready when we were at their office and I'm listening to all of that. I'm like, should I say yes? No, maybe. Like maybe talk to Steve afterwards. Let's go to our hotel and figure out if this is really what we want to do. People are talking in the elevator. So are you all in? And we're like, well, we don't know. And then we go in the hotel. We're like, I think so. I think that was yes for everything. But like, let's talk more, right? As we're like looking at numbers and figuring things out. But yeah, it's just great.
Yeah. That's so cool. That is so cool. I just remember listening to those 10 things and then afterwards saying, you can't not be successful if you truly believe and do all these things. Like if you just you just do those things, you'll be successful. I love that about those guys. That was a unique experience for me. All right. Okay. So now you guys have been in it for a few weeks, at least from the signing, right? So let's tell me about, Steve, tell me about what's happened since the signing and kind of what you're dealing with at this point. Having just started or having just signed, I should say.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that's very important for people to know is I still have my job. I still have my job because, I mean, even as you get the loan, they want you to keep your job until you actually get the loan. So I'm still working as a Division III tennis coach. That's first and foremost, right? But once I get the loan and once the business starts, then I will be transitioning to that full time. But yeah, so far, since we're still going through that loan process, I still have my job. In the loan process, there's maybe 3 different steps. You have the first step, which is just getting all your initial paperwork in, like your taxes, your pay stubs, and so on and so forth. And then you move into underwriting. And then at underwriting, they go through all the stuff again. They ask for more documents or more proof of things. The underwriting process for us was actually so far the easiest. That was less than, I think, 3 days. It was really, really quick. And now we're actually in the last stage, which is called closing. And this one, it's a behemoth. It's a lot. We just got the email, I think, yesterday or today, and it was so long. I just kept scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And they're just like, we need all of this by this date so you can get your money by this date. And I just looked at Yada and I said, hey, it's a long list. And we are going to get after it because we got to get after it, you know? So again, we're not scared. We know we're going to get it done. It's just, let's do it. Let's get after it. So the loan process has been, I think a lot of people could get frustrated during the loan process. It hasn't frustrated us just because we've had other loans for cars and our mortgage and everything like that. So we kind of knew the bank was going to ask a lot of us. All we do is they ask for something, we get after it. And that's been working really good. We don't let it really, we don't have subjective opinions on it. It's been very objective. Let's get after it. Let's do it. And we've been able to really nail it down and do a really good job. Even SquareCow Movers, they're like, wow, you're cruising through this. And I feel like that's funny because I actually don't work on it a whole lot. I just see the list. Okay, let's work on it when I can. And they're saying we're going through it really fast. So interesting to know.
Nice. Okay, well, now I need you to tell us, that's great. You're getting through the process. It's very interesting to hear about the loan process and the different steps. But I want to hear about, I think there was maybe challenges that are happening around in this loan process. I'd love for you to share it, just in general or however much detail you want to provide. But just so people know that sometimes it's not, everything is as straightforward as we'd like.
Yeah, so one thing that we're running into with the loan process, and I think it's just more or less the communication of the bank and everything like that. In our case, we are getting a loan, and the loan is hinged upon us getting trucks for our business because we need big trucks to move people, right? And the word that they used, or the phrase that they used, was that we needed a purchase agreement in order to even start the loan process. And so when I had the call with the lady, I asked what exactly that is. Because you hear it, but what are you actually saying? And she's like, I need a signed copy of you buying a truck. And I questioned her on it. I'm like, that's why I'm getting the loan. I'm getting the loan to buy the truck. So how do you want me to buy the truck if I don't have the loan? So there was kind of a back and forth with that.
Yeah.
And so that was an interesting part of the process because they're not going to budge on that. But at the same time, that's what the loan, it's just a very interesting part of the process. So eventually what happened was I got really lucky. The lady I was working with was on vacation. And so someone else took over the loan. And he called me and he's like, why is this holding this loan up? This shouldn't take so long. And so I called him because he left a voicemail and I'm like, well, I haven't really bought a truck yet. I haven't signed any paperwork because I need a loan. He's like, you don't need a agreement? He's like, all you got to do is send me a quote. So once he said that, we moved on to the next process within 20 minutes because I had tons of quotes, but I just didn't sign with anyone yet because I just didn't feel like we were far enough along that loan process. Because I would have to put down money on a truck and then tell them to wait probably 2 or 3 weeks until I could actually finance it. But now that we're further along, I feel much more confident probably signing a truck within the week because we should have the loan within the next 10 to 12 days.
Nice. That's great.
Alan, but then doesn't stop like that because then you add insurance. Then the insurance wants to know where you're going to park your car. but you're not going to have insurance until you have the DOT number and some other number that I already getting familiarized with trucks now. So until you have those numbers and you tell the insurance where you're going to park your truck, which needs to be zoned, so you also need to talk to the city about where you're going to park your truck. So it's like everything is like this. And we're trying to like cross, like how we're trying to move on with the process and cross everything, but we're like, we can't really quite cross this one yet because X, Y, and Z still needs to be answered. So that is the part that I'd say we haven't been frustrated 100% yet, but it has been very challenging, and we're trying to find a way, which is one of the things that SquareCow says, like find a way, right? Trying to find a way how to overcome those, because I'm like, in the end, in this case, it was just a communication barrier, I suppose. I don't know if the person understood that way on the loan and somebody else interprets in a different way, but yeah, just tough.
Yeah. There's a lot of details that have to get hammered out and figured out. And that alone is enough. But then you mix in communication and, potentially, not great communication makes things more challenging. But you guys are pushing through it. You're getting things figured out. And, that's really what matters at the end of the day.
Like if I gave that lady a little bit of doubt, and like if we would have had a signed document, like for a truck, things would have gone even faster though, because I still need to get that right for the closing. So I think maybe she was just trying to get us ahead of the game, but then at the end of the day, to move on to underwriting, all we needed was the quote. But so it just depends like how fast you want to go through it and how fast you can move on things.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So for each of you, let's start with you, Steve. I guess, did anything surprise you about this process? Going from knowing nothing, just inquiring about franchising to, where you're at today. Anything surprised you, or anything that you wish maybe you had known earlier in the process?
Overall, no. Overall, everything was explained very clearly by you, by the franchises going through it. I think the only thing, and I mentioned to you this once before, the only thing that surprised me was how drastically different all of them go through the process, maybe. Based on, like Yada said, SquareCow Movers, no selling to you. They are not selling to you. It is more just let's get to know you, you get to know us, and let's see if that's a good fit. Where there was a different franchise that I work with, they were all about selling themselves to us. And then even just how they conducted the validation calls, how you set things up, I just thought it'd be very similar from each one. Like, for instance, there was one franchise where they really wouldn't do anything. Like, everything was up to you as the person. Like, if you didn't take any steps, you wouldn't be moving on. Luckily, I was taking steps every week and I was crushing it. And then other franchises are on top of you. They're emailing you, they're texting you, they're calling you to keep you engaged and keep you through the process. So it's just really interesting, surprising to see how they all act differently through that whole validation process and learning about them. Yeah, it's very true. Different franchisors will have different levels of experience, and sometimes if they've been around for a really long time, they know exactly what works and how to get people through the process, and have very structured, and some maybe don't have as good of a process. Or some franchisors will outsource who they use for that process, franchise sales organization. So that's another thing. But yeah, it is very interesting how different they can be, for sure. For both of you, let's start with Iara. For anyone that is out there listening that's considering leaving their job and jumping into franchise ownership, what advice would you have for them?
Don't fear and do a lot of research, I'd say. I'm going to give my husband all the applause because he's the guy that does all the research in our house. He does not buy a sock without doing research or looking at the evaluations and if there's 5 stars, etc. Right? I'm like more of like emotional move type of like, just maybe in my blood. But I think lots of research, and I think lots of validation, not just doing the research and talking with the companies itself, but talking with the other franchisees, right? Like, what are they doing? How do they feel? And we've been to lots of those calls. And I think that's what got us excited the most, because there are some people out there that have the discipline and are crushing. So that's what I would say. And from my perspective, I continue to be doing my corporate job. I really love my job. I sell chocolate, so I cannot just not love it. But my future ideas is like, if we're really crushing into this, I think that Steve will rub so much his happiness that maybe we're going to be stepping out and creating my own territory, right? So just I feel like, do not be afraid and talk a lot with others to understand how they feel about the franchises.
Love it. Thanks. Steve, how about you? What advice would you have for anyone looking into franchising or leaving their job?
Yeah, I think Yada stole mine a little bit because, like she said, she doesn't do a lot of research. It's always me doing the research. So for her to say that kind of steals my thunder. But yeah, I feel like because of the amount of research I put in, every step I'm feeling confident. Because I've exhausted all of the research, I've exhausted all of the questions that allows me to feel like I've overturned everything. I've looked at it the best that I can. And because of that, I have the confidence to move forward, right, and go into it. The other thing that I would suggest to people that I think is really important, and something that I don't know why I did it this way, if it's because you and I talked or if it's just the way that I am, action overcomes fear. And I never had fear, I think, because I was just taking so much action. Like every week, I wanted to knock things off the list. Every week, I wanted to talk to all the franchises. I didn't want to take a week off. And again, that's not hard. Every week, it's maybe an hour per franchise. Usually it's less. I would say 20 to 40 minutes on average with each franchise. So if you look at 1 week, maybe that's the least an hour, at the most maybe 3 hours. Because if you have 3 franchises and you're taking action with each one of them. So that really helps me, was doing the research and taking action every week, which led us through the process, I thought, in a very efficient manner, not too fast, not too slow, and allowed us to get to a point where when we made the decision, we were ready to make it.
Can I add something else?
Please.
I also want to say that having a coach like you is very helpful, because we don't know what we don't know. We didn't even know franchises existed. I mean, maybe Culver's, but because why not? But other than that, it's just like we don't know what to ask, right? So having a coach help you on like what kind of questions should I ask, because you don't know what you don't know, and you haven't been in the business, you're not in the mindset, you come from different type of like backgrounds, right? And then you were there throughout the whole process and telling us like, have you thought about this way? Not telling us what to do, right? But more kind of like a guide to us, right? Providing us like, hey, how about if you thought this way, or ask us a question that made us think. It's kind of, I see you kind of like a psychologist in a way, like trying to guide us through like how we are going to get there. The way the decision is really ours is very important. So I would definitely recommend that to whoever is listening to us here.
Awesome. Thank you for adding that. Thank you so much for joining me today to share your story about going through this process and, getting into your business and, everything that came along with that. And I'm so excited to catch up with you guys again, hopefully in a few months, if that works for you guys. That would be awesome to track your progress. So thank you so much, and congratulations on becoming franchise champions.
Thanks, Alan.
As you can tell, Steve is all about getting things done that need to get done, which includes learning and asking questions so he can keep moving forward without being fearful. They have the makings of a real success story, but it's not without its bumps in the road. And that's why I wanted to do this series, not to share a polished version about how it all worked out, but to document it as it happens, because that's what's actually useful for you. We're going to end today's episode with Steve and Yada explaining what to do if you're interested in exploring franchise ownership. Who should reach out, and why should they reach out to me if they're interested in franchising?
I think someone should reach out to you, Alan, if they're interested in franchise, or maybe just a little bit thinking about it, because you don't know what you don't know. And there's so many franchises and For me, I was in a situation where I didn't really know where to go anymore. And when I saw your commercial, it all kind of made sense to me. And going through the whole process, it continued to make more sense to me. I could also see someone going through the whole process and learning this is not the right fit for them. But that's the beauty of having a coach, is you're going to learn that hopefully earlier in the process and get a better fit for you.
I think somebody should come talk to you, Alan, if they're tired of what they're going through in the corporate world and they're looking forward to being the owner of their destinies in terms of business, right? Somebody that does not know where they want to go or what they want to do, but they know they're confident of their talents and their skills and their gifts, and they are not so sure how to use it, but they know that they want to build their own business. If they don't know how to get where they want to get, I think you're the best person to talk to, because you've been there, you've had your own company several times, you know the process, you've taught a lot of us the process, so you know the questions to ask, and you are never telling us what to do, but you're guiding us to get to where we want to get through questions and through different perspectives, and that is very much appreciated.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate you guys so much. I'm super excited for you. I know you guys are going to crush it, as you have mentioned multiple times. And I'm just so excited to be a part of this journey with you guys.
Thank you so much.
We're so excited, Alan. Thank you so much.